Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And tonight we have writer director Tory Jones, whose new movie is coming out September 13th, called The Wicked Ones. It's a sequel to the 2017 The Wicked One. So today we're going to be breaking that down. Tory, thank you so much for being here with us. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me get on here and talk about this crazy horror film we did.
It is crazy, but it is wildly entertaining. Bloody, gory. The slasher films are making a comeback, and there's a lot of demand for them. Now, the notes I was given, it told me it's coming out September 13th, but it didn't tell me exactly where. Is it coming
Mhm.
out on video on demand? Where exactly is it releasing?
Yeah, so the 13th of September will actually be your digital and on-demand stuff. And then right now, actually, it's up for pre-order on like Amazon and Walmart and Best Buy for a special edition Blu-ray and DVD, which will release November the 8th.
Nice, nice. So, like we talked about, this movie, The Wicked Ones, is a sequel to your 2017 The Wicked One. At which point, with the original, did you know that you wanted to make a sequel? And how long did it take you to get the people involved to make that sequel a reality?
So when we made the first Wicked one, we had no idea that people would sort of resonate with the character and with the film because it was shot for literally no money.
Mm,
And when we had our world premiere, we had around 600 people show up. And then from there, the film sold out its first pressing of all physical media on day one.
nice.
So it was gone on all the retailers. And then what really set it off is people started cosplaying as the character
Mm-hmm.
and going to conventions as this character, which blew my mind because again, this film was made for literally, peanuts. So um, it was just surreal. So that pretty much told us that we wanted to do another one and sort of take it in a unique direction from the first, which is what we did with the sequel.
Yes, you definitely did. Did you have the script and the idea written soon after, even maybe even at the same time as the original, or was it something that the story came to you after you saw the success of the first one?
Yeah, the story actually. So that film we shot that in 2016, and then it was released in 17. And then we didn't actually start. I didn't have a script for this film until 2019,
Okay.
which is when we shot the film, and we shot it towards the end of 2019. I think August, September, and then of course the pandemic happened right at the beginning of
Yeah.
2020. So
So, doing a sequel to a film that developed a very nice cult following, as the writer, did you feel an extra sense of responsibility to sort of one up the original? Was that added extra pressure that you felt?
yeah, totally. We really wanted to do something different, and the things that we wanted to do, where we wanted to touch on how the events of that first film, affected our survivors,
Yeah.
but we also wanted to touch on how the violence of that first film sort of inspired these copycats
Mm-hmm.
to sort of carry on with the Wicked One's mythos and his legacy. So that was really the jumping off point for it. Didn't really have an idea for, that at the beginning, and it just sort of developed over time. But it definitely wanted to up the ante on this film and definitely wanted to uh, do more than we could with the first just because of our budgetary limits that we had.
What are the rules for horror film sequels? Definitely increase the body count.
Yeah. Well,
Now, the film, you mentioned this, the film explores the trauma and the survivor's guilt from the characters in the first film. How did you want that element to be used in the sequel?
yeah. So I really wanted to in the first film, we see these characters are going to our lead character Alex's her family's property to sort of
Hmm.
get away for a weekend and
Yeah.
just chill. And obviously, her brother gets involved and he's got some issues and stuff like that. And so the reason they're all there is because of her,
Hmm.
and then they're all dead. So with this, we wanted to say, she has avoided going back here for 10 years. She has children, and he just so happens to have a gig in that town.
Yeah.
So she goes back to the town with no intention of going back to her property where all of this terrible stuff
Hmm.
happened. But by the end of it, she literally has to go back there to sort of save her life and save her kid's life and face this thing head on that has haunted her since what happened in the original.
And that leads me to my next question. Going back, a therapist would say confronting your past trauma is therapeutic. Doesn't quite work out that way in the sequel. So, do you think this just pushes them over the edge, or do the events in this sequel actually help them confront the trauma and it was probably the only way they could get over it and fight back?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably the only way that she would have got over it was how it plays out at the end. And I think by the end of it, I think it's a very cathartic conclusion to her arc of this story.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, literally, I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't seen it, but she literally, it comes down to her and the Wicked One.
Yeah.
And, I think for her, I think it's a very cathartic moment
Mm-hmm.
and wraps up that arc nicely.
She takes the way I would describe it is she takes her power back. All right. For 10 years, this has been traumatizing her, and she finally stands up to it. And I think it is, in a very weird way, it was probably the most therapeutic thing that could have happened to her. Now, there's this strong element of family that is the underlying theme of this film. How much of that did you want it to stand out? Just the sense of family and the support of family and so on.
Yeah, I definitely wanted that to be a big thing. And that sort of was a thing. We toyed with that in the first film with her and her brother, and the fact that uh, they had some trauma due to their parents' passing away by accident,
Mm-hmm.
and so literally and figuratively, when they go to that property, they're facing that trauma head on in the first film, and the Wicked One character is sort of a metaphor for all of these unresolved issues that literally they is figuratively and literally killing them. So it's sort of the same thing with this situation is they go back there, and honestly she doesn't want to go back there. She doesn't
Yeah.
want to go back to where all of this stuff happened. She has no intention of facing off with this issue, and she can't even anticipate that these copycats are even a thing that they get loose or whatever. But I think that it's sort of like fate, and she had to her fate is tied to the Wicked One, and her fate is tied to defending her family.
It,
And she because I think it's because her unwillingness to face that situation, her family, her kids, mainly her two teenagers, they end up in the
right in the
the
middle of it.
crosshairs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It seems like no matter what she did, this was going to have to be confronted with in one way or another. Now, you
yeah.
co wrote this with Nathan Thomas Milliner. How did the
Mhm.
co writing process go? Did both of you bring your own unique ideas to the story? Tell us how that worked out.
Nathan is a great writer, and I credit him because really the family dynamic and the wittiness and the jokes about like the music and the
Yeah.
BG and the Phil Collins stuff, all that's Nathan. So he really brought I think a heart to it, and Nathan has said publicly that the reason why that he wanted to be involved is because of the sort of the reaction to the first. So, and he's a super talented artist and filmmaker in his own right. So to have him involved with this was just a truly awesome thing, and he really brought a lot to it. A lot of it is Nathan,
Refresh my
honestly.
memory. In the first one, did you write the script by yourself, or did you also have a co-writer?
On that one, I co-wrote that with a good buddy of mine, a good writer. He's wrote actually a lot of my stuff with me. Is Cheyenne Gordon, and he
Wow.
actually plays the brother in the first movie.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Now, the origins of the film is, of course, a serial killer, especially with the first one. What is it about serial killers and horror movie slashers that a lot of people find fascinating? You know, slasher movies, there's a big demand now back for slasher movies, you know, going back to the 80s. People want to see more of that, like the Jason Voorhees, the Michael Myers, the people in the mask that out there are slashing teenagers in the woods. What was it for you that uh, fascinates you about slasher films?
I think my thing with slasher movies is that that's sort of my favorite horror that I watch. One, because I grew up watching those films, and two, because it could happen.
Yeah.
Literally, the like Halloween, is basically about a dude who's stalking babysitters
Yeah.
on Halloween. That could happen,
Oh,
and
yeah.
probably happens a lot more than we realize. And it's just the realistic nature of it, and it's I think we go through stages where people want, oh, we want the paranormal stuff. Well, then we get tired of the paranormal stuff.
Hmm.
Then we want, let's go back to the slashers, and then we get tired of that, and then we want to do like the torture porn movies again,
Yeah.
with all like Saw movies, and then we're like, man, we're over that. I think it just comes in waves, like.
Yeah.
But for me, slashers is I love slasher movies. There's so many different things you can do with a slasher movie, and it's just the realism I think of it that's fun and makes it feel authentic.
And the demand for slasher films, I think, are always going to be there. What really kicked off the paranormal thing was movies like The Blair Witch Project in the late '90s, and then Paranormal Activity, and then the movie industry just took it and ran with it,
Yeah.
and they went in all sorts of directions. Now, in real life, serial killer stories are much more horrific than what we actually see on the screen. When it comes to you writing your slasher films, do you research any of the real life serial killers to, I don't know, maybe add some authentic element to it about what really happened in real life, or do you want to purely keep it on the fictional plane?
Sometimes it's both. Sometimes I'll look at, you'll research stuff like, I don't know, like interviews with like Gacy, or interviews with
Ted Bundy, yeah,
yeah. And then but honestly with this character, it's almost like the reason why he's doing this, which we touched on in the first, but we kind of explain it a little more in this film, through like flashbacks and like weird trippy vision stuff. Is that this guy is under the influence of something otherworldly,
yeah. And
and
yeah, so I don't mean to cut you off. That actually leads me to my next question. There is a very strong religious slash supernatural connection in this film. What would you say is the deeper connection between the religious symbolism and the serial killers that makes the two seem go hand in hand with each other?
I think that uh, honestly, I have a little bit of a religious background in some aspects, and I think that you always hear of people being under the influence of something that is not of this world when they
Yeah,
commit certain things, or the devil made me do it.
exactly.
And I think with this film, what I wanted to say was that this is someone who is under the influence of this thing, and we don't really specify, is it a demon, is it like a some sort of a Native American spirit because it's a bird, it's a crow creature,
Yeah.
right? Uh, so we don't really explain what it is, just that he found this rock with this drawing or
Hmm.
carving into it on his property, and that sort of started everything that
It
happens.
sort of drove him mad in a
Yeah,
way, and that's where the supernatural element, depending on the viewers, their takeaway could be that there's something mystical about this rock that drove him over the edge. When you got down to writing the second script, did you already have the money that you needed to make it in place, or did you write the script and then start pitching it to people to try to raise the funds?
it was kind of a little bit of both. We had people come on board, a couple of private investors that came on board and donated to the film, were invested in the film, and then we did an Indiegogo to raise what we felt we needed to do this film. And honestly, this film was made for more money than the first, but it still wasn't made for a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until like more recent work that I've done that I started getting into like more money for my films. As each film has went on, it's just grown exponentially that way. But this film was still made for relatively a small amount of money. But yeah, it was a combination of both. It was the Indiegogo thing, and then it was private investors.
I say this a lot. Yeah, of course, money is very important, but if you've got the good story and you've got good actors, you can really make a great movie for not a lot of money. And it's been done. It's been done so many times. And then you have these mega $1 million movies that end up flopping because
Yeah.
the core elements, good story, uh, good acting, directing, is just missing. Uh, Compared to writing, being a director, how much do you love directing, in comparison to writing?
Um, with independent film and with me personally, I wear a lot of hats. So
As does every other independent filmmaker.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I wish that I could just sometimes just focus on directing, but it's literally like I'm trying to get direction. I'm trying to look over here, dealing with this. Oh, we need this over here. So I'm stretched thin, but I honestly, the thing about directing that I really love is just being able to find those little moments
mm-hmm,
in an actor's performance, little things that they do, whether it be an expression or whether it be like a just little nuances that they do that you're like, oh, that feels real,
yeah.
that feels good, and I love that part of the collaboration process with actors. I always tell actors, make say this to where it feels natural to you.
Yeah,
What's on the page is not set in stone. If it feels unnatural to you, let's find something
yeah.
that gets the point across naturally for you. It doesn't have to be verbatim word for word. And I that's what I love about directing is just finding the authentic performance with an actor.
Have you ever directed anything that you did not write?
Mm, no, no,
So
I
let's
can't say that.
play sort of a hypothetical here. You have
Yeah.
somebody presents you a script, they want you to direct it. Have you ever thought, man, this is something I've never done. I've never directed somebody else's writing. How do you think you would approach that? And also the opposite of that. Would you feel comfortable having somebody else direct what you wrote?
I definitely would feel comfortable with someone directing something that I wrote. And honestly, that's something that we're working on right now with my company. Is we want to start every year. We've done a film a year.
Yeah,
And right now we're trying to say we want to get to a point to do two films a year, one that I direct and one that the company strictly produces and someone else directs. Um, so that's what we're working on that right now, and I'm all for that because I kind of wish that I had that starting out. I wish that I had someone to say, "Hey, we're going to take care of all this stuff so that you don't have to do everything yourself
yeah.
and you get to focus on directing." Um, Maybe I'll write it, maybe they'll write it, maybe it'll be a combination, maybe neither of us will write it, it'll be someone else. And as far as someone coming to me and saying, "Hey, I wrote this, will you direct it?" I'm interested in that for sure. And I have people that are saying we're going to send you this. I guess my thing is it would have to be something that I know could keep me invested
Yes.
for a feature film.
You got to believe in it.
Yeah, yeah. And if I got something and it was, I had a friend named Spencer, and she sent me this idea that was really good, and I really like it. And I think she's working on writing it out in feature form, but it's called. I don't want to misquote because I'll get screamed
Yeah,
at.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's a really cool idea, and I told her, I was like, this is something that I would honestly like, I could get behind. So stuff like that. It just I would have to be able to be fully invested in it
And that
to direct.
makes total sense. When you are, shooting and directing, once you've casted, are you the would you say you're the kind of director that, okay, you casted, and some people say casting is 70 to 80% of directing. You like
Mhm.
to collaborate with the actors, but you give them their space. And like you mentioned earlier, if a scene doesn't feel natural with them, you are completely open to working with the actors to draw out the best performance you possibly can get.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that as long like I said, as long as they're getting the point across of the scene,
Mm-hmm.
then I allow them room to improvise and to play around with it.
Yeah,
I think the worst thing you can do is say, no, this is how it is, this is how it's got to be, and if you don't say this, it's not going to work. That's nonsense.
yeah.
And if it every actor is different, what works for one actor doesn't necessarily work for every actor.
Absolutely agree. Tori, I want to thank you so much for coming on here. Again, for everybody, the movie's called Wicked Ones. It's coming out on demand Tuesday, September 13th. It's a sequel to the 2017 The Wicked One. It has a nice cult following. I'm sure everyone's going to come back and watch the second. And I'm sure you're going to build up a new set of fans with this one as well. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
No, just if you want, just follow us on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on there at official Tory Jones, and then for all of our films and what we're working on and things we have coming up, you can just go to jonestownfilms.com and check that out and see all of our current work that we're working on right now.
Absolutely. And like I said, if you are a horror slasher fan, this movie is not going to disappoint you. There's a lot of gory, bloody scenes. There's a good story behind it, so make sure to check out Wicked Ones. It was directed by our guest here, Tori, written and directed by our guest here, Tori Jones. Thank you again, Tori. I want to thank our audience, those who are tuning in live, and those who will be watching this later on. On behalf of Tori Jones and myself, stay safe and stay walking, everybody. Good night.